Hello, my name is Mark Levesley and I'm a freelance science education writer. I'm also the series editor for Exploring Science International. This is a series of science education resources and books aimed at lower secondary school students between the ages of 11 and 14. I'm proud to say that it's an incredibly successful series. We published the first edition of Exploring Science in the UK in 2000, and this international version marks the publication of the 5th edition. The series is in use in schools all around the world. What I want to talk about in this video is transferable skills. These are the skills that we develop in one aspect of our lives, which we then go on to use in other aspects of our lives. For students, we tend to think of transferable skills as those that they develop in school and then transfer and apply to their futures, both their future education in university, for example, and also their future careers. The world is changing so quickly at the moment that some of those future careers are going to be rather different than those that exist today. To think about the speed of that change, it's worthwhile noting that the iPhone was introduced in 2007. Since then, in a relatively short space of time, smartphones have completely changed the way we live and work, and as teachers we need to try to predict what the future will hold, so that we can train our students effectively for their futures. And that effective training involves transferable skills. So let's do a bit of future gazing. You could pause the video here and have a go at predicting some of the jobs that our students of today may end up doing in the future. Jobs that do not exist today. I have a few ideas to share with you. Commercial space pilot. There are various companies that seem to be nearing completion of projects to launch space tourism. Advances in DNA technology could result in a need for a new type of ecologist, the extinct species revivalist, perhaps in charge of a real-life Jurassic Park. Alternative energy consultants could help develop new sources of energy. 3D printing and stem cell technologies could be combined to make it easier to create new organs for people. Depression and other mental health issues could be treated by changing people's memories. Climate engineers could help it to rain in drier areas and change weather patterns to minimize the impact of climate change. Some of these ideas will sound plausible to us now, and others will seem a bit more unlikely. But I remember watching Star Trek as a boy and thinking that the ability to have a video conversation with someone using a device on your wrist was completely impossible. This is what Ginny Rometty, the chief of IBM, said at the World Economic Forum in 2019. So when it comes to education and skills, I'll hire for skills, not just their degrees or their diplomas. Today's employers are increasingly looking at the transferable skills that potential employees have, rather than what they have studied. So let's consider what some of those transferable skills look like. Now, I suspect that you have seen lists of skills like this before. This is a list of transferable skills from Edexcel Biology International GCSE. So it's not just me or the head of IBM who think that we need to help students develop these skills in school. Examiners also agree that transferable skills are important. And there are many lists like this with different authors and different organisations giving the skills different names. There is no one definitive list of transferable skills. But there is a consensus about the broad categories of skills that students should develop. And those broad categories concern thinking or cognitive skills, intrapersonal skills, and interpersonal skills. Before I move on to look at some of these broad categories, I think that there are a number of things that we need to remember about these skills. First, that there is no one way of helping students develop a certain transferable skill. A mixture of approaches is needed. Equally, students cannot simply learn transferable skills. Students need to develop the skills by practicing them. When students do work on developing a transferable skill, there is usually no correct answer, something that many students find rather frustrating. But in a job, when the boss asks you to find a solution to a problem, it's because the answer has not yet been discovered. And the last of my points to remember about transferable skills is that there are many different aspects to each one. For example, we can communicate by writing, in diagrams, by talking to one another, etc., etc. So each of these skills contains a whole array of different competencies or things that you can do. So it's often helpful to think about each skill as being a toolbox. And as students practice and develop a skill, they are adding more tools to that particular toolbox. And so when a student is faced with a situation that demands problem solving, for example, a student with more tools in his or her problem-solving toolbox is better equipped to solving a broad range of problems and so more likely to solve any given problem. And having a broader range of tools to use for a skill also makes it more likely that students will find the tools that best suit their own ways of working. So I'd like now to talk about those broad categories and give some examples of how the team working on Exploring Science International have integrated transferable skills into the course. And the transferable skills that we develop in the course include all the STEM skills, that is, skills that are especially important in science as well as maths and design and technology and IT. So the first broad category of transferable skills are cognitive skills. This includes problem solving, analysing data, drawing conclusions, and critical thinking. Science is all about gathering data and thinking critically about it in order to draw valid conclusions. So exploring science includes opportunities to carry out a huge range of traditional science experiments, and each one comes with a worksheet, such as this one. And students get to practice their skills of collecting and analysing data and then drawing reasoned conclusions. And of course, some students will have gone further in their skills development and so will require less support. So each experiment comes with two different types of worksheet, one offering more guidance than the other. But cognitive skills development is not just limited to doing practicals. Every topic in Exploring Science International has a section on thinking skills. These are generally very short optional activities consisting of questions that do not have right or wrong answers, but force students to think around the question. Here are some. I'm not going to go through all the different types because there are many, but as an example, have a look at the bottom one, odd one out. Here, students need to choose something from a list that doesn't match the others and justify their choice. You could pause the video here and think about another answer for the odd one out here. You might have chosen oxygen because it's needed for combustion, but the other two suppress combustion. Or nitrogen because it's not involved in respiration or photosynthesis. Or carbon dioxide because it sublimes. There are many possible answers. The only rule is that students need to justify their answers. Decision-making is another transferable cognitive skill, and students are provided with opportunities and techniques to help develop their decision-making skills. Many of the skills development opportunities come with a skills sheet to help students. The course as a whole comes with nearly 100 of these skills development sheets. This is an example of a skills sheet designed to help with decision-making. Here's another example of a skill sheet. This one helps students with concept maps, and there are plenty of suggested opportunities for these in Exploring Science International. Students learn how to use concept maps to think about what they have learnt, and also as a way of making new connections between ideas. Making new connections between ideas is an example of innovation, and that's another aspect of the cognitive skills set, being able to think creatively, to invent, and to innovate. Every unit in Exploring Science International has pages that look to develop specific STEM skills, including innovation. This page, for example, is all about creativity and innovation in the food industry. But in line with all our skills development, we don't just provide opportunities for students to practice certain skills, we provide structured support so that students can improve their skills. For example, in these pages we show how some people go about developing an innovation. So this is a list of 4 common ways that people use to innovate, which students can then go on to use as a template for developing their own innovations. Other pages deal with problem solving, And again, examples of ways in which problem solving can be approached are given to students to use as scaffolding as they build up their own skill set. It is not simply a matter of giving students problems to solve. Other pages look at very specific aspects of science but include transferable skills, such as these pages, which are about thinking creatively to design and then analyze models. The next broad category of transferable skills are intrapersonal skills. These are, if you like, internal skills, the way you adapt to your environment, your attitudes, being aware of your thinking, being willing to learn, being able to understand and manage your emotions, self-discipline, self-confidence, being patient, being positive and managing your time effectively. These are all examples. Each unit in Exploring Science International starts with a page designed to spark students' interest so that they become motivated to learn more about the science rather than just seeing science as another subject in which they have to learn stuff for an exam. By doing this, students start to become aware of the types of things they find interesting and are encouraged to explore their own intellectual interests, to become curious. Ethics are another aspect of intrapersonal skills. While ethics are a matter of judgment that an individual makes, it is important that students understand what ethics are and what an ethical question looks like. And at the end of each unit in Exploring Science International, there is an open-ended question designed to get students to consider their thoughts about certain issues, including those that have an ethical component. We also encourage students to consider their social responsibility and help students to develop ways in which they can self-evaluate, such as by using criteria. And since different methods of self-evaluation will suit different students, we also provide alternative strategies for how self-evaluation can be done. And the last broad category of transferable skills are interpersonal skills, how students interact with others. Communication is a key transferable interpersonal skill, and Exploring Science International helps students to communicate in words, in symbols, diagrams, etc. We show students examples of clear communication, explaining why they are clear. During the course, students will get a lot of practice at communicating information in many different ways, and sometimes they need to work together to do this, and teamwork is another key transferable skill. Communication and teamwork often go hand in hand in terms of interpersonal skills. And as you would expect, there is an extensive range of skill sheets to support the development of these skills. This skill sheet helps students to work together on a project. And there are many other skill sheets to help students develop associated interpersonal skills, such as taking part in debates and public speaking, and evaluating the work of others. So that's a brief overview of the ways in which Exploring Science International covers transferable skills. They form an integral part of the course, since we know how important these skills will be for the futures of the students we teach. We also hope that students find following the Exploring Science International course interesting and fun. For most students, taking exams is not an enjoyable activity. However, the learning of a subject should be, and I hope that the passion that I and my fellow authors have for our subject areas is evident in the materials that we have produced, and that together with great teachers, we can all encourage the next generation to be engaged citizens who have the skills they need to flourish in a rapidly changing world, but also a generation of citizens who continue to take an active interest in science. And some of that next generation of citizens will do jobs that don't yet exist. Thank you for watching. Further details about Exploring Science International can be obtained from your Pearson representative or from the Pearson website.